I believe birth is like an open portal.
Mhm.
I believe it's a connection between this life and another.
Mhm.
And to be able to stand there at the portal and oftentimes be the very first person to see this brand new life before even the
Mhm.
parent sees. And I see the moment the baby comes in, I feel like I'm
Mhm.
rebirthed every time I see a birth. And I'm giving birth again every time I see a birth. And I'm renewed and my spirit is renewed. If there's a type of a baptism, then I believe that's
Mm.
what it is.
Step with care towards the precipice. Hold my hand through the dark. See the light, it is breaking. We're mothering new world.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Mothering New Worlds, a podcast about revolutionary caregiving and world building in the midst of societal collapse and rebirth. I'm your host, Bianca Mabute-Louie. I'm an author, a sociologist, and your thought mother for this journey. And I have conversations with folks who show us another world is not only possible, it's already here. First of all, thank you to everyone who has supported this new podcast by rating 5 stars, subscribing, following, sharing with your friends. Please keep doing that because that's how people find out about this project. I, like many folks who have spoken out about Palestine, have been shadow banned on a lot of social media platforms, which makes promoting a podcast a little bit challenging. But I am not discouraged. I will keep going because I believe in my community, which is you all. And I believe this project will reach the people it's meant to reach. So thank you so much to everyone who has played a part in that already. Okay, so getting to this week's episode, this conversation was super special. And I have a feeling I'm going to say that at the intro of every episode, but this conversation really was very profound for me. It was a conversation that I have come back to over and over again because talking to this guest was transformative. Even while editing this episode, I found myself getting emotional and just feeling my brain and heart getting reoriented in the best ways. So without further ado, my guest today is Sierra Sankofa. She is a Houston-based full-spectrum doula and community organizer. She is the founder of Sankofa Mama Birth Services, focused on Black maternal health and community wellness. Sierra is also the founder of #WeGotUs, a Houston-based disaster relief and mutual aid collective that responds to emergencies affecting marginalized communities. She is also the program director of the Shades of Blue project, where she oversees maternal mental health advocacy and social support programs for Black mothers. Sierra's leadership in advancing maternal mental health, birth justice, and community-centered care has earned well-deserved recognition, and she has received multiple awards. She is also a homeschooling mother of 2, a proud lifelong Houstonian, and a TEDx speaker. That is a banger of a bio. Sierra and I, in this episode, talk about liberatory homeschooling, where she honestly challenged a lot of preconceptions that I had about homeschooling. And again, her work as a doula and mutual aid organizer here in the South is really just so profound and so hopeful. And so before I play the conversation, I want you all to know that where Sierra and I are located here in Houston/Harris County is reported to be where Black mothers experience the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. This is the context and the structural violence and the heartbreak we situate ourselves in. I think in many ways, this episode is a love letter to Black birth workers, and it's also a love letter to the South and the long legacies of Black mothers surviving, organizing, and resisting and creating new worlds in this region. This conversation has my whole heart. I am so grateful for Sierra spending this time with me. Oh, and also, she took this call in her car, which if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that because she had an internet and power outage, I think, at the same time as when our call was scheduled, which is something that just happens when you live in a Gulf state. So that is, also a little bit of a window into the context where Sierra and I live and organize in here in the South. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. You can find her website, social media, and all the resources we reference in this episode in the show notes. Here is Sierra Sankofa on Mothering New Worlds.
Okay, yeah, I absolutely grew up in Houston. I'm born and raised here. My family has really deep roots here. Our family business is one of the oldest Black-owned funeral homes in the South and
Hmm.
definitely in Texas. So grew up here, grew up on the North Side, and I've always loved this city. And so I started my motherhood journey, became a mom in 2015 for the first time and then again in 2018. Feels like so long ago, but I found birth work at the same time that I found motherhood.
Yeah.
So, I always say like I gave birth to Sankofa mama
Hmm.
same time that I had my child, and I had my first doula client. My baby was, I think, about 2 or 3 months old, and I went to my first
Wow.
birth. Yeah.
I like to start all my conversations by grounding first in place, though, which you already started
Yes.
talking about. I would love to hear you talk a bit more about. I mean, there's no place like Houston. I didn't grow up
No.
here, but I've been here for 5 years, and I have personally a lot of thoughts about what it means to mother and caregive here. But I'm curious for you, how would you describe what it's like to be a mother here in Houston?
I love my city completely, but I did find when I got into my motherhood journey that there was a lot that was gate kept. And I'm like, why didn't you guys tell me this? And then
Hmm.
especially with the path for parenting that I chose, definitely I don't know how deep I can go here, but I went a different kind of route. And so I really had to pull back layers to find my true community,
Hmm.
who was moving in the same way that I wanted. I wanted to have my children to be free, in all senses of that word from birth. And so I followed a non traditional path with some of the choices that I made for them and their care. And then we've been homeschooling. They've never been to a traditional school. So that was something I always knew. And being in Houston, I mean, there's just so much of everything. The city is so rich in culture and in all these really amazing institutions of knowledge that as a homeschooler, it's a gold mine. Like there's so many places to
Yeah.
go. There's so
Hmm.
much to tap into Houston that I haven't done because I've always said it's for tourists. So
Yes.
now I'm like, no, I want to do those things though. I want to know all that there is to know about the city. And motherhood has made me have that perspective because wanting them to be able to fully
Yeah.
learn and experience this city where they have roots, it makes you become more adventurous and more curious.
Yes. No, I totally hear that. I've lived here for now almost 6 years and I've never been to the rodeo. And I've never had any desire. I know. I know. And I'm
No.
about to say something blasphemous. I never really had any desire. I am like such a West Coast person and like so strongly identify with California. But over the years, I'm like, okay, I see the complexity and the beauty of Houston. But with a kid, I'm like, we got to go to the rodeo. So hopefully this
There's
year.
so much. Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta see. And so I'm not a rodeo carnival type of person. A lot of
Hmm.
people are when they have children, but we
Hmm.
actually love the livestock show. My children
Oh.
love animals. And so going and seeing these animals, the thing I like about the rodeo is, no offense to the zoo and aquariums and things, but when you go to the rodeo, you see some of the most beautiful, healthy animals, and you
Hmm.
see and understand how they really are supposed to be living, taken
Hmm.
care of. If they are going to be domesticated, this is how you take care of
Mm.
animals. And they look
Yeah.
so different than what you see in some other places. But it's a really great experience. And even just seeing, we were literally talking about this on the way from the house to here, seeing how the children devote themselves to taking care of the animals, that
Mm.
in itself is really amazing to see. Like you see these small children and they have like a giant pig bigger than them walking next to
So
them.
cool.
So cool. It's so cool. And so just that part, and the culture, it is a Houston thing. You
Yeah,
got to love
yeah.
it.
No, maybe we'll check out the livestock because the zoo is depressing, but my my son really loves animals.
Yeah.
I have so many follow-up questions I have in mind. So you talked about how you wanted to, when you were giving birth and preparing to have children, you wanted to go about things the unconventional way. So do you mean homeschooling? Were there other ways that you wanted to go about having kids and becoming a mom that
Yeah.
felt different?
I just knew that I wanted my children to always know the truth of everything, and finding out that truth by giving them the freedom to question things, which is not something that I necessarily grew up. You didn't question,
Yeah.
you just accepted and did it. But just I knew I wanted to open myself up in different ways. The more I got into the work I was doing, in terms of activism before I had children, the more I learned and the more I rejected the traditional way that
Hmm.
we teach children to grow into themselves. And that's a huge, huge thing. So why is it that we do it this one pathway and we think that helping them come into themselves is strictly based on academics alone? It is academics, but what about their character development? What about their sense of themselves? And what about them understanding what it means to be a citizen of the world and the responsibility we have to each other? And I didn't think that that could happen
Mm-hmm.
within a traditional school system.
Yeah.
Um, I also felt like, being Black in Houston growing up was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I'm 43, and in the time that I grew up, I still experienced lots and lots of microaggressions in school. I definitely experienced this wondering. I remember sitting in class wondering when we would be learning history and world history, and there was just never anything ever that African people contributed to
Hmm.
civilization. And it's just hard to understand because on the one hand, you have your family telling you you're wonderful and you're great and you come
Yeah.
from greatness and you can do anything, but you never see that. And I just didn't want that from them. I
Yeah.
learned the truth eventually, but I just feel if I can tell them the truth from the beginning and not have to go back and like repair so much, then why not
Yeah.
just tell them the truth? So
Yeah.
that's my philosophy in
Yeah.
lots of things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it totally makes sense. I never thought of myself as someone who would do homeschooling. And I still don't think I have it in me. But I think like the more and more I feel that our education system is really only to create workers. And especially in Texas, I feel like with the takeover
Mhm.
of HISD, it feels like ground zero of how the state has really like doesn't give a fuck about Houston
Yeah.
or the children here and the school, everything. It just feels like, yeah, like, of course, we should be, and people are already thinking of alternatives to the typical institutional way of
Yeah.
doing things when those institutions cause so much harm.
Yeah,
I want
and
to, okay,
are omitting so much that needs to be in. This is just really quick, but
no, go ahead.
I was at the University of Houston, junior level political science class, and the professor asked us to do like a popcorn reading session where everybody read different paragraph. We go around the room, let's knock this out. And I remember sitting in there, and I'm a product of HISD my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
but sitting in that college classroom, junior level class, and there were people who were struggling to read. And I remember sitting and thinking, like, how do you get out of school and you are
Mm-hmm.
struggling with reading, but you've
Mm-hmm.
graduated? And again, it's just a testament to the
Mm-hmm.
school system, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. So with homeschooling, what are some of the things that you try to instill in your children? So it sounds like making sure that they know their own history. What are some other things you try to do?
Yeah. And even that they know what a privilege it is to be able to be exposed to knowledge in the ways that they are and helping them to understand that, this is a very particular path that we're taking to education.
Yeah.
And I remind them of that a lot. And it's not something that we should take for granted. It's something that we need to be grateful for and we need to seize this opportunity and do everything with it that we can because what I'm giving to them is a situation where they are borderless
Mm.
as long as they continue to pursue knowledge with hunger, then the future is borderless. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much that you can do. And one of the things that I love about the path that we're taking is intentionally teaching them entrepreneurial skills. Teach them to not just think about what can I do in terms of what major can I go towards,
Mm-hmm.
but more so of what is it that I really want to contribute to the world? And if there is something that exists in my own lane and I don't see anything else like that, I can create that. I can go after that. And matter of fact, I can start now as a
Mm-hmm.
child. And,
Mm-hmm.
years from now, imagine where I could be. And then, also foreign languages is something that I think we suffer so much in the United States from our lack of focus on languages outside of
Yeah.
English and Spanish, you know? And English and Spanish, of course, you need to know both in order to get things done here. But even beyond that, I think that it's something that when you look specifically at African American history,
Mm-hmm.
our original languages in the cultures that were stolen from us when we were stolen from Africa, we've lost those.
Mhm.
And what was retained in the Middle Passage was demonized.
Yeah.
And we were told that anything that was of your native culture is evil, and you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so even now, studying African languages is something that a lot of African American people won't touch with a 10-foot pole. They're like, I don't want
Hmm.
any of that. But for me, that was really important. I can't tell you what specific tribe my
Mhm.
ancestors were from, but I know that that is homeland. And I
Mhm.
know that there's a connection on a spiritual level there. So it was important for me, for my children to learn to speak an African language. And so they study Kiswahili and
Mhm.
Spanish.
Mhm.
The other things we do in homeschooling, we do all of the basics that everyone would do in a traditional school, math and English language arts, science, all of that. But they have other electives, coding, holistic development, which is, of course, where they talk about everything from mental health
Hmm.
to what does it mean to be a friend. Hearing that conversation was almost healing for me
Hmm.
by way of my daughter. I listened to her holistic development class, and that's what they talked about one day. And I think that's something that we don't learn that. We don't talk about that. What does it mean
Yeah.
to be a friend? What do you value in friendships? What does that mean? And just helping them to develop a healthy outlook, because that too is growing up. Yes, science and Spanish and English and math, all of that, but also the other development of who
Yeah.
you are and understanding, your culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it sounds like there's an opportunity to really nurture your children as whole people in a way that institutional traditional schooling just does not care for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's things, I mean, we're doing the science fair, the National
Yeah.
Science Fair,
Oh, cool.
that's coming up soon. They the myth that homeschool children are weird, that's one of the first things people usually mention when they meet me and my children, because they're like,
Sure.
"Wow, look at them. They're so normal." And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe they are
Yeah, they're just
normal, but
normal people. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're normal people. Everyone they know is homeschooled. All of their friends,
That's so cool.
the only people they know who go to regular school are like, family,
Yeah.
relatives, but they know more children who are homeschooled than not.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think that debunks a lot of myths too, because I think people have this idea that when you homeschool, it's super isolating, that, yeah, your children are weird because they don't
Yeah.
interact with other children. But yeah,
Right,
the more I've
right.
heard, yeah. And so is it, I'm curious because I remember when I was living in Oakland, there was a movement of like Black families
I
doing
love
homeschool
Oakland so
too.
much.
Yeah, that's where I was when I was in California for like 10 years. I'm curious, for
Okay.
your homeschool community, is there a focus on like Black centric curriculum? Is it other Black families similar to you trying to have this educational experience that you're talking about?
Yeah, so first of all, I have to say that Oakland is where it all came together for me. My
Really?
daughter was yeah, we were there, and my daughter was 10 months old, and I also spent some time there when I was pregnant, and we have some friends there, beautiful Rastafarian family, and
Yeah.
they live right in the middle of Oakland, and they
Uh-huh.
have land. And on
Hmm.
their land, they have a full garden. Like whenever we would stay with
Mm-hmm.
them, you go out, let's pick our food for dinner. We would make salads and things just fresh from the garden, but they had 6 children, and she was pregnant with the 7th, and they were homeschooling. And
Mm-hmm.
I got to see the way of life that really made me understand all
Hmm.
that homeschooling could be for my children. And these children were a part of an African centered homeschooling program.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to learn about that and learn how you were, like I said, not just learning the basics in terms of academics, but you're learning about your
Yeah.
culture, and you're learning about who you are, and even the way that other cultures are approached. I love it. It's been in such a beautiful, respectful way, of
Mm-hmm.
just helping them to understand, but understanding always that, hey, and you're not, excluded from this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we currently, but I patterned everything after that, the way I
Oh,
saw them doing
cool.
it,
Yeah.
and they were a source of strength and encouragement in those early days. And I got to even see what it was like to balance more than one grade level at a time.
Hmm.
But I did it DIY for many
Mm-hmm.
years. I just did a lot of research. I found multiple different curriculums that I liked. I put together all the ones that worked and everything that worked specifically for my daughter. And it was just trial and error. And then I had some major life changes and divorce. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm in too deep or not, but I refuse to quit.
Yeah.
Not homeschooling was never an option for me, and because it's a fundamental decision. And
Hmm.
so I found Whole Living Academy, and they are an African centered homeschooling program started by two moms from Third Ward in Houston.
Cool.
Both of them have since repatriated to Rwanda. And so it's an online program, and
Hmm.
all of the teachers are spread out around the world. There's a couple of teachers who are here, like my youngest daughter. Her teacher is a really amazing revolutionary rapper
Hmm.
and social activist, Akila Nahanda. And she, like, imagine having a revolutionary rapper as your
It's amazing.
kindergarten
Yeah.
first grade teacher. And then my oldest daughter's teacher is in Rwanda. They take Spanish from a Black woman in the Gambia in Africa.
Yeah.
I forget which Latin American country, but the another Spanish teacher is there. And so the teachers log in from all over the world. The students are all over the world, but
Hmm.
a lot of them are in Houston. So we have a really big homeschooling community.
That's amazing. It sounds like such a rich experience. I would expect also as a parent too to get to witness and facilitate this for your children, that it would be
Oh,
incredibly
yeah.
healing. I mean, I'm assuming that's
Oh,
not what you
yeah.
experienced at HISD.
Right. I don't think my mom felt that way
Yeah.
when I was at HISD, but
Sure.
no,
Yeah.
it is. It is on so
Yeah.
many levels. Even down to like the simplest thing for me, which, as adults, when we have a day, as we call it, like it's just, I'm having a day, I'm having one of those
Yeah.
days, we excuse ourselves from things.
Mhm. Mhm.
We just do. We're like, I need my
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
then, we tell children though who don't have the benefit of perspective and this
Mhm.
deep ability to weigh out what I'm feeling in terms of the broader goals that are, they don't understand all of that. They're having a hard
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
all that we teach them is, okay, if you're having
Mhm.
a hard time, you just push through anyway. And
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
why so many of us are having to, like, it's so profound when we get to
Yeah.
learn, like, oh, you can rest and all these
Yeah.
things that are buzzy and trendy now, and
Yeah.
take time for you. We had to
Yeah.
learn that because we suppressed it for so
Yeah.
long. And so there are times when my children are having a day and I
Mhm.
see it and I can recognize it, and I have the freedom to say, that's fine. Then take this day. Take this
Yeah.
day. We make sure we do something productive with it, but if you need to take a day off, you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful and liberating. I'm curious about your birth work too. So I hear how like the homeschooling, a lot of it is also reclaiming your roots and your culture and your languages. I'm curious because I once upon a time thought about becoming a doula. Maybe it is still in my
Okay.
future, but a big impetus for me was because I wanted to learn like traditional birth practices and healing modalities indigenous to my culture. I'm Chinese, and there's a lot of like appropriation of traditional Chinese medicine, but I wanted to learn
Mhm.
for myself,
Mhm.
right? Because my postpartum was so defined by my mom putting me on the 40-day confinement period, all of that,
Love
right? And
it.
so I'm curious for you. I don't want to
Love it.
project my experience, but I'm curious like how birth work plays into everything that we're talking about for you.
Yeah. Oh man. First of all, please do. Please, please do. If
One
I can just
day.
leave that there. But- because that is exactly what birth work needs. It needs us to decolonize the work and reclaim culture, because just how important that was for you in your postpartum period, there are others for whom it will be just as needed, and will have such an impact. And the one thing that we cannot do is lose our cultures. It's so precious. And
Mhm.
so please do. And if you ever decide to, I will support you all throughout your training process. I have you. But
I'll call you up.
yeah, so for me, so Sankofa Mama is the name of my doula business and has been since 2014. And Sankofa is this Akan concept where it means to reach back and get it. It means to
Mhm.
take the things from the past that serve us well in the present and take us into the future in the way that we should go. Everything new isn't the better. Sometimes stuff
Mhm.
is just new because we
Mhm.
live in a capitalist society.
Mhm.
So I knew when I was pregnant that I wanted to feel connected to the birthing experience. I knew nobody told me because I never saw this in anyone I knew up close and personal, but I knew there was more to it
Mm.
than what we hear about birth.
Mm-hmm.
I always call it the war stories because that's how people
Yeah.
start talking about it when they start get a group of women together who had, traditional hospital births. And you're gonna hear some war stories. But I just knew that there was more to it, and I trusted my body and the process. I trusted birth outside of the hospital.
Hmm.
What I found in myself, I used to always say, I never want to be a teacher because I just didn't like it. I didn't want to be a teacher. And now teaching is my favorite part of this job.
Yeah.
I found in me this really strong passion for mothering the mother,
Hmm.
for being what someone may not even realize they needed simply
Mm-hmm.
by being a constant presence for them.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how important it is to give everyone a pillar of calm. And I liked showing up for people. I've always liked showing up for people.
Yeah.
My midwife told me that I should be a doula. I didn't know what a doula was. And
Hmm.
then I started looking online, and there wasn't a lot online in like 2014. But from what I saw, I was like, I guess I could. And then we got into it, and I was like, oh, this is everything that I already love. And
Hmm.
always felt inside of myself, I didn't know what it was called. And so I have found my place as a
Hmm.
nurturer of those who are going through the process of bearing life, giving life, and losing life,
Hmm.
which is why I am an all spectrum doula or full spectrum doula, which means that I support any stages of pregnancy or loss,
Hmm.
whether it is elective loss or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
That work was also something that was in me because, like I said, my family's business was a funeral home. And
Mm-hmm.
what I learned from my grandfather and watching him, run this funeral home for all these years was how to center the human
Hmm.
within a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
how to recognize what someone who is in a state of extreme suffering is needing without
Mm-hmm.
them having to even say it. Just
Mm-hmm.
how to move intuitively and be present for people. And that was something that I grew up being aware of and understanding why that was important. And so it unfolds in my work in that I get an opportunity. I believe birth is like an open portal.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's a connection between this life and another.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to stand there at the portal and oftentimes be the very first person to see this brand new life before even the
Hmm.
parent sees. And I see the moment the baby comes in. And in that way, it's like I'm gonna quote a Lauryn Hill lyric here. And she said, I baptize my lips every time I take sips. I feel like I'm
Hmm.
rebirthed every time I see a birth. And I'm giving birth again every time I see a birth. And I'm renewed and my spirit is renewed. If there's a type of a baptism, then I believe
Hmm.
that's what it is. And so in birth, I continuously am able to mother in the way that my heart has always wanted to.
Yeah. I have chills hearing you talk about the baptism that is birth that
Yeah.
you're the first to witness. Is there a
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I hear about birth doulas and I hear about death doulas, and it was only very recently that I heard about elective or non-elective loss in pregnancy doulas. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Because I feel like just for example, even friends and people I know who've had miscarriages, it's become such a sterilized like medical procedure, and which it can be for some folks, but I'm curious what it's like for you.
Yeah, I think one thing that really bothers me is that, I am very much pro-choice, and I am so pro-choice that I believe that you can choose whatever is right for you. And in choosing that, you also are fully entitled to having a human emotional experience following your
Mm.
choice and that it doesn't invalidate your choice or your right to make it. It burns me up when I hear people say, if someone has an elective loss, well, you chose this. Okay, and
Mhm.
they can
Mhm.
over and over again. It doesn't mean just because you make a choice of what's right for you
Mhm.
that you don't get to feel any type of grief or pain or go through a process that somehow in making a choice, you
Mhm.
become a robot devoid of a soul. Like, like I'm still
Mhm.
gonna have feelings. And just because I feel a way, even if that feeling is sadness, that doesn't mean that I regret my choice.
Yeah.
And I believe strongly that folks who have abortions and elective loss, they deserve someone standing by their side as well.
Mhm.
Anytime life has passed through you and
Mhm.
life has touched your womb in some type of way for however long, you have earned the
Mhm.
right to have somebody stand by your side.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because what a powerful thing you just experienced. You deserve support. Everyone deserves support. We
Yeah.
all want that. We all would hope that at our lowest, there would be someone who would come along, someone who didn't forget about us, someone who reminds us that we can hold our head up. And unfortunately, our world, especially our world in Houston, Texas, in the South, is
Yeah.
not set up that
Yeah.
way. And so I'm really excited as I'm saying this because I'm going to be in the room tomorrow with abortion doulas, death doulas, birth doulas. They're all coming
Mm.
tomorrow to Doshi House, and I invited them all because I feel that we have much to learn from one another.
Mhm.
There are birth doulas who have experienced losses with their clients,
Hmm.
and they are not ready. They're not prepared. They're not because birth doula, everyone thinks like birth, it's birth. There's
Yeah.
going to be a birth. But every pregnancy doesn't have the same outcome.
Yeah.
But regardless of the outcome, you're still going to go through a postpartum period. You're
Yeah.
still going to have different needs. And so there's a lot that we doulas can all learn from one another. And
Mhm.
I love for the public to know and understand that there
Yeah.
are a full spectrum of doulas available out there. We think a lot of times based on what we would do ourselves, but when we broaden that and we think about, not everyone has a support system.
Yeah.
If they do, maybe it's not large or maybe it's not near or accessible for some reason. And some people just don't.
Yeah.
And so even when we look at death doulas and the role, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you just call, your family? It's not an option for everyone. And for some people,
Mhm.
they may have their family there and still need extra support. So
Mhm.
I think that it's beautiful that we are starting to recognize this work, but it's not new. We've always done
Mhm.
this for one another. We've always
Mhm.
done this. We've shown up for one another. We just didn't have a name for it, but we were
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the perfect segue because I also wanted to ask about your mutual aid work. We got us.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of this podcast is just thinking about care in a radical and expansive kind of way. And mutual aid is obviously like a very important part of this moment as our institutions are collapsing. And I'm curious, yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about how we got us started, what you all do, and yeah, how you think about mutual aid in connection to all of these things we're talking about.
Yeah, I would love to. Goddess has my whole heart. So, 2021, Houston, the freeze happened, not just in Houston, it was all over Texas and some parts of Louisiana. And the infrastructure was not ready. The city was
Mm-hmm.
not ready. The powers that be didn't seem to care too much.
Yeah.
And so the city was in a bit of a panic. I was a doula at that time. And as a doula, one of the things that we always get are calls from our clients trying to give us things. You're a
Oh.
mother. So think back to, when your child was first born, people give you gifts of diapers and clothing and some of the stuff you never even get to. You never even get to take the
Mm-hmm.
tags off and they outgrew it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you had like a bunch of size zeros and some people's babies come into the world in a size one diaper. So they're like, I have all these diapers. What can I do with this? So we were always getting those calls. So the freeze was happening and I had I had a toddler and a baby myself. And, we were huddled together. And my ex-husband, we were just like doing what we could. And I started getting phone calls from some of my clients, and they were texting me and they were scared because they had
Mm.
recently given birth. And so they had tiny babies.
Yeah.
And we're talking freezing temperatures and no
Yeah.
heat inside.
Yeah.
And so they are terrified. Like, what is going to happen to my
Yeah.
baby? We're without power. Think back to brand
Mhm.
new motherhood, like
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. Yeah.
can you imagine? You know what I mean? And then there were some people who, were pregnant and they were very afraid of becoming ill and things. And so I was just getting all of this. And then the doulas in Houston, who I just will love the doula community in Houston forever and ever and ever. And I have to say, no cities doulas do it like we do. If you want to make something come together, call Houston doulas, okay? So I got into a text thread with some of my doula sisters, and I'm like, look, what do y'all's clients have? What do you already have? We started pulling together resources, and I was like, just get everything you can, and I'll come get it from you. We are going to put something together so that we can give this out to people because the stores were closed. People couldn't get
Yeah.
stuff from the store.
Mm.
So it was like we're gonna make a free store. Like we're gonna just do a pop-up and we're gonna make sure people have what they need. And I went to social media and I wrote a note in my phone, in my iPhone, and I screenshotted it and I posted it. And it was like, hey, mamas in Houston and Texas, what do y'all need? Like, let us know what y'all need. I'm working with birth workers. I'm trying to see what we can do to help. And immediately I was just like inundated with all these responses,
Hmm.
and because people were really scrambling in that
Mhm.
time. And a doula from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, sent me she put a comment on the post and she's like, hey, I'd love to help, let me know what we can do out here. And then we started a conversation in DMs. And within the next 24 hours, she visited a few cities in Louisiana. She drove from Baton Rouge to New
Wow.
Orleans and then met with Sister Midwife. Shout out to Sister Midwife. She's wonderful doula trainer and midwife in New Orleans. Between them, they all organized and got on the road, drove supplies here to us. By then, All Real Radio, my home on the radio for 6 years, they had gotten behind me and said, hey, if you need a building to do this, then we have a building. I put out a call to the community and I said, look, whatever you can donate. Those of us who can go to stores, we're going to go to stores. We're going to get everything we can, diapers, wipes, formula, water. And donations started coming in. Was at the store, another local doula, Sanyika, she went to another store for me. And anywho, within 48 hours, Baton Rouge came to us. The city gave like never before. We had
Hmm.
so many supplies that we did 2 weeks worth of distributions
Wow.
in Third Ward at Project Row Houses. We did it for 2 weeks in a row. Doulas came out. Almost every doula I know came out. They volunteered their time. We sorted supplies. We had so much that we were able to send out a few groups of folks driving around to the unhoused folks in Third Ward and downtown, and we were giving them what we had. Other groups in the city were doing donation drives, but not
Hmm.
for mothers and children. And
Mhm.
it was so amazing. They were calling me, other organizations, and saying, hey, we did a drive yesterday. Do you want to have all of our surplus? And I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, sure. And I met so many amazing community partners that way. And with the help of all of my doulas, we did those 2 weeks worth of distribution. And after that, I was like, I can't back down. The city needs
Hmm.
us. And the next big disaster was Hurricane Beryl, and
Mhm.
it was so disastrous. It was
Mhm.
horrible. I didn't have power myself for 9 days. My
Mhm.
volunteers didn't have power. And every day, these people, truly driven by love, would show up and come outside with me. Hurricane season is also the
Yeah.
hottest time of the year if you're not in
Yeah.
Houston. And my volunteers would come and be outside with me for like 6, 7 hours giving to the community. And the only thing you want to do after a time like that is go home and take a shower. And they couldn't even do that. And they would go home
Hmm.
and rest and come back the next day. And I was just blown away by the people who help me, the people who make this possible is the
Mhm.
community. The community gives, other organizations come together and they give. March 18th we actually have our annual community collaboration meeting.
Hmm.
We gather with all of our community partners, which is everyone that we've ever worked with, everyone who's ever volunteered with us, anyone who wants to volunteer. And we meet and we go through our emergency response plan, which is
Hmm.
what we came up with to determine, how we decide that a response is needed, how we
Hmm.
mobilize our partners, how we organize it all, how we run our volunteer flow, everything. One of our partners is the Relief Gang with Trey the Truth, and they were doing a big response out in California for the Eaton
Hmm.
wildfires,
Hmm.
and we were able to partner with them. They called us and were like, "Hey, do y'all have diapers?" And I'm like, "Do we have
Hmm.
diapers?" And I went to our storage and we were able to send a truckload, a trailer full of
Wow.
diapers out to California. So it's really, yes, it's Houston based, but I'm not going to hear about mothers and children who need something and not do what I can.
Yes. I am emotional hearing this because I was here during the freeze. We
Mm.
also lost power at after Beryl, I think. And I mean, I think this response is such a contrast to the utter failure that Houstonians experienced from the state. And I think like the contrast and the juxtaposition is like so stark and it's so devastating but also so beautiful. And it just makes me think about how, so again, as someone like not from here, I think the South gets a really bad rep, and the rest of the country says really mean things about the South and about Texas when natural
Yeah.
disasters happen. But I have a friend actually who's an organizer here also. He says that Houston is actually prophetic. And I feel like you are an example of that because of the ways that you all organized and came together became a blueprint for how people suffering from the fires got diapers. Like the infrastructure that
Hmm.
I think like Southerners, and I'll just speak about Houston, like because of the utter constancy of hurricanes and climate crises
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
heat and the failure of the grid, I think there's a way that Houstonians take care of their neighbors and know how to build infrastructure for care exactly like you're talking about. That is not like anything I've ever seen anywhere else.
Well, I I
Hmm.
I definitely have to agree because there's never been a time that I've come to the community and said, "Hey, here's how we can help a lot of folks. Will y'all do it with me?" And everybody's always like, "Yes." They always are. And
Yeah.
I literally did a TED talk about it this past
Yeah.
year, and
I
that was,
watched it.
oh, thank you. That was an awesome opportunity just to try to speak to the heart of why we're doing this, and something that I'm working on. So in 2025 I had the honor of being named one of the BIPOC Arts Network Fund artist awardees, along with some of the most amazing artists that Houston has. And so one of the projects that I'm working on with that is a hurricane memorial project.
Hmm.
So anyone from Houston, which you probably have gotten to see this a lot because you're not from here. People from Houston all have a hurricane story.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
people, it's like, the recent ones like Beryl and Harvey. But then, my mom remembers, being a single mom, with the two of me and my brother. I think it was like Hurricane Andrew or something, it was like in the 90s. You know what I mean? And so everyone here has a story. And so the exhibit is called What We Carried,
Hmm.
because when we receive people, we call them our neighbors. When we go to serve, we're serving our neighbors. So when we receive our neighbors, they're coming to us in various states of
Mm-hmm.
despair. For a lot of them, it's been hours or days without power, without any of their normal day-to-day way of life, without provisions and things like that. And we're receiving them and they're in trauma. But in that immediate moment, all we can do is put a band-aid on a bullet wound. We want to circle back and care for the community in a few ways. One of them is this exhibit. So, what we carried is an invitation. We're going to invite the city to give us items that are emblematic of what they carried with them during the storm.
Hmm.
For some people, it's something very literal, like, my phone charger was my lifesaver. That's what some people say. Or they have like a bucket that was used to help flush the toilets.
Yeah.
For some people, it's something more. For some people, it was deeper. I met with a family who went into debt that they were not able to recover from even a year after Beryl, and it was a debit card that they were thinking of because it was such a difficult time. But the mom was pregnant. There was mold days after the storm. which means it had already been there,
Yeah.
and it's exposed. And so they had to get out, had to get a hotel room, but even being able to prepare is a privilege.
Yeah.
And they weren't really able to do it, but had to do it. So whatever people carried, there was another woman who, older woman, her and her sister, both older women, and her sister was on some type of medical equipment. This was during Beryl, and we're talking, elder women, like in their
Mhm.
set. And the other sister kept trying to call and get help. She kept calling and trying and was getting the runaround, getting told, call this number, call 211,
Mhm.
call this, and just wasn't getting it. And her sister ended up dying during Beryl with
Mm.
the prolonged power outage. And it was so painful for her that she had to move out of the city. She moved to New Orleans.
Mhm.
She's no longer even able to be here. And so through the exhibit, I'm hoping that this hurricane memorial can be a place where people can come and lay down what they've been carrying all this time.
Yeah.
My children, I even see when it rains, like is the power gonna go out? It's like
Yeah.
we all carry something with us. So there will also be an opportunity for folks to share either on note cards or on
Mm.
drawing paper what they want to share from what they carried. And then from the items donated, we will have a traveling exhibit that'll have some of the items displayed, and it'll tell the story behind that item and the person attached to it.
Wow.
But it's called What We Carried, and it's because there's so much work we have to do, and we've also expanded over the last year. We want to be able to put our communities in Houston in a position to where we're not always looking for who's going to rescue us, and
Yeah.
instead we are creating a new relationship with preparedness.
Hmm.
So, like I said before, preparation itself is a privilege, but we have found some ways through I'm working with West Street Recovery. Shout out to
Yeah.
West Street. Yeah, those are that's my family.
Yeah.
I love them so much. But yeah,
Yeah.
working with them, we've been doing disaster prep workshops so
Mhm.
we can start helping more folks to be prepared and, figuring out ways to actually give them the items they need to prepare and not just tell them, hey,
Mhm.
this is what you need. So, coming at it in a few different ways, but we will always be there after any storm with diapers, wipes, formula, and water.
This is absolutely incredible and like so I think in the midst of so many hard things that we see on our feeds every single day, like this infrastructure of care that you're talking about that takes work and takes relationships. I'm also familiar with West Street Recovery. I interviewed a few folks from there for
Yeah.
another project I was doing and yeah, I
Oh,
mean this is
nice.
life-saving kind of community building. Um
Absolutely. And in them, I have found such a strong ally. They'll, of course, be at the
mm.
community collaboration meeting. I just facilitated meditation and journaling for their organizational
Oh,
retreat
cool.
weekend before last. So,
Nice.
but yeah, that's another side of it's actually birth work. I always have specialized in working with families through teaching deep relaxation. I used to teach hypnobirthing, and then I
Wow.
studied clinical hypnosis, and I wrote another curriculum all centered around ways to use deep relaxation as a means to get through childbirth. But I also have been able to implement it through teaching breathwork and meditation. And, you know, the way life is right now for so many
Yeah.
of us, it's like
Yeah.
we're definitely having contractions. This is
Yeah,
a lot,
yes. Collective
so
contractions. We're in the birth canal.
collective contractions. So teaching
Yeah.
people how to do it. I don't know if I can talk about another event that we have coming
Sure.
up.
Yeah.
Recently, this is a refreshing interview because all the interviews I've had recently have been centered around the Harris County Health Department report that said that Harris County is the deadliest place in America for Black women to give
Yeah.
birth. And
Yeah.
so I've had to have these really heavy conversations, centered around that. And so when I read that report, and I read every word, I just
Mhm.
was like, okay, solutions. I don't want to sit and talk about statistics over and over because the statistics are real people. And
Mhm.
while we're talking about the statistic, the real person is still
Yeah.
experiencing this. So, what are immediate solutions? So, I'm working on a few public health initiatives where we'll be offering some public health education. Some of the reasons why moms are dying were due to previous conditions like prior to pregnancy, things like diabetes, hypertension. So some public health classes centered around things like that and postpartum mental health disorders, just
Mhm.
to get folks more aware, and the more the community is aware and not just pregnant people, then the better
Mm-hmm.
off we are. And another thing that I'm working on is taking care of the people who are expected to do a lot of the heavy lifting with this Black maternal health crisis, which is birth workers.
Yeah.
And so I recently finalized a partnership with the Young Center through
Mm.
the Houston Museum District. And this May, I literally hung up with them, making sure it was okay to say this right before we were on the air for this. But this May, we will be offering a restorative retreat for
Hmm.
birth workers who are serving these populations and expected to take on so much. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of burnout in birth work. And so
Yeah.
this retreat is designed to really help folks put it all down, all the heavy things. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're familiar with the Jung Center, they offer
Mm-hmm.
different modalities for healing. And we're going to be offering those things to doulas on this day, sound baths, yoga nidra, all different types of things. We're going to have a beautiful Ayurvedic meal prepared,
Wow.
everything designed for restoration, rejuvenation. And I have some other things in store for birth workers this year too. And
That
that is
sounds
also going to be the most exciting thing is it's going to be free of charge. Doulas will be able to
wow.
attend this beautiful retreat at no cost.
Wow. This is all so special and amazing to hear about. I mean, it's just so like the care that you just embody, not even in hearing you talk about it. And then, of course, like in all the services you provide is just so rich. I can like hear it and feel it just as you're talking about it. And so I so appreciate everything that you do. And I feel so energized hearing about your mutual aid work and your birth work. My last question is for you yourself. Do you have practices, be it spiritual or physical or emotional, that help keep you sustained?
I do. So I am someone who strongly believes in speaking on the things that I think and that I feel. And so even with my partner, like that's one thing that I'm definitely known for. I'm going to share and release and not
Yeah.
hold things in, because I think that's we do a lot of harm to ourselves by
Yeah.
holding things in for fear of offending someone else. And meanwhile, we're offending ourselves far more. So there's that. Since I started in birth work, I have always had a circle of birth workers that I trust and who I really believe are in this work for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never been a time over the past 12 years when I haven't been able to pick up the phone and call one of them. There's some of the OG doulas in Houston, people like Kelly with Maternity Journey, Janice with Divine Growth and Womb Wisdom, Sanyika, known as Sanyika the doula extraordinaire for Houston. These are some of my, my close circle. Anya, you guys remember Anya back in the day. But I find a lot of value in being able to sit with folks who do what you do, because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to understand in a way that it's hard to get other folks to understand. And then I really, one thing that I do almost daily, I believe in spending some time by myself. So it's usually once my children go to bed at night, and I have to let myself experience that still quiet in the house when there's nothing, at least for a little bit. I'll go to sleep, I'll get rest, but
Mm-hmm.
I need that. Just to sit
Mm.
in silence is
Yeah.
healing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. Well, I wish you so much restorative silence and
Thank,
also community with your doulas tomorrow. This was seriously so wonderful just to get to know you and hear your story a bit more. And yeah, so beautiful
thank
to hear all
you.
of your offerings. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Um,
appreciate the opportunity.
yes. How can listeners follow and support your work?
Yeah, so with social media, Instagram has a monopoly on my life. I know that there are other platforms. I just personally refuse. So you can find me on Instagram at Sankofa Mama. There in my bio, you can find all of the other organizations that I'm affiliated with. We Got Us. I'm also the program director for the Shades of Blue project. So you'll see us all linked there. And then you can check me out online, sankofamama.com. That's SANKOFAMAMA.com.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sierra. That was Sierra Sankofa on Mothering New Worlds. If you resonated with this conversation, would you rate 5 stars, follow, subscribe, share with your friends? We're at Mothering New Worlds on podcasting platforms, Substack, Instagram, YouTube. This is an independent podcast by me, Bianca Mabute-Louie. Music for this podcast was composed by Zarina Jimenez, and the logo was designed by Vanita Agrawal. Catch you next week.